Hi, I'm Dave Briner. We're here to cover a couple topics. We're going to do do's and don'ts of the table saw. So this can cover a lot of ground, but this may be a long video. We're going to try to keep it down to the top 20. I monitor here also, so I see a lot of these events happening from time to time. So we'd like to clarify some of the best practices on the table saw. There's a lot of don'ts, but there are also some do's. So give it a shot. I'm also going to create an index. I'm going to break these up into 20 separate little segments, and I'll have the timestamp where you can jump to whatever section you want to be refamiliarize yourself with. But I highly recommend you go through it at least once. All right, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to begin with item number 1, and that is before you even touch the table saw, you have to have a couple things in mind. One is no long sleeves, especially baggy sleeves. Nothing dangling, like if you have a hoodie, no strings, no lanyards, and I'm even cautious sometimes with watches, but certainly any kind of dangly bracelets, anything that might get caught up in a saw blade or anything around it. So take an inventory, make sure that you are pretty much put together. A lot of those are club rules anyway, but they're just good practices around a moving blade. And that same thing will go with the drill press, band saws, a lot of moving items. All right. Okay, item number 2 is I'm going to start encouraging people to use the guard more often. I am as guilty as anyone of pulling this out of the way when I want to work. But I am in the process of trying to use this guard a little bit more. It'll help in a lot of instances. It keeps your fingers from coming, or any part of your body coming in contact with the blade, and it also reduces kickback. But while using this blade, there's one kind of restriction, is when you slide the fence up, you can't use that blade in anything less than 2.5 inches between the blade and the fence. You need space to use your push stick to get your stock through the cut. So 2.5 to 3 inches is minimum. If you have to go less than 2.5, the guard and swing it out of the way. That being said, for the rest of this demonstration, I am going to pull the blade out of the way because everything I want to demonstrate to you today is going to affect the area of the blade, the guard, the fence, and everything around it. So this would just be an obstruction. Item number 3, I want to address how we set the blade height. I often see people that will have this blade cranked way too high. There's no need to have a blade higher than necessary, and what this does, it could cause 2 things. It overheats the blade, it'll put burn marks on your edge of your stock, and there's a lot higher chance of kickback. Now, that said, let's adjust the proper height and I'll explain kickback. So the proper height is going to be, what I want to talk about is, I expect the bottom of the gullet, all right? So that's going to be this little point right here, between there, anywhere between there and the bottom of the tooth. So I want this set, so this gullet is probably just about that height, but I don't want to have the tooth down inside. So I want to keep that just high enough, and what this gullet does is clear the chips. So I don't want to, I don't want it any lower than this. So that's the proper height for setting against the stock you're using. Now with that, I want to explain, because I'm going to be using kickback explanation or description about a dozen times in this video. So If I happen to have a full board and I'm cutting, and this is only one aspect of kickback, if I cut down through that piece and one of the pieces somehow gets dislodged and a tooth grabs it, that blade spinning so hard is going to dig into that and it's going to shoot that piece right past you, hopefully past you. But if it hits you, and I have been the receiving end of that on my hip, it will leave a heck of a mark and it hurts. So we're trying to avoid any type of kickback. Another kickback can be anything. It can be when you cock a piece, if it gets sideways in here, the blade will dig into the side of the board. It can kick it back that way, whether it runs on top. So if you're cutting and that board rides up and then you drop it, it can grab into that and kick it at you. So there's a lot of different ways that kickback can occur. And we're going to be talking about multiple instances. So if you hear that word, most of the time it's the material's getting caught in the blade and that blade is forcing it back at you. Okay, item number 4 is going to be the riving knife. All right, that is the splitter behind the blade, and this performs a vital function. Mostly is if you are cutting a piece and you have an improperly dried piece, the kiln just dried too fast, this board can develop a lot of internal stresses. So when you get back here and you cut, a lot of boards will have the tendency to squeeze back on and pinch the blade. The riving knife inhibits that to a great deal. So that means our standard blade, combination blade, is 1/8 inch thick kerf. So the riving knife has a number on this side. This is a 0.1 thickness. Now we also have thin kerf blades, and these are 3/32 inch thick. So there's 4 different there's 4 extra riving knives. These are different size for these blades. These are 0.086, and that fits that kerf just fine. So the riving knife, these are all 4 the same, but this, you have to have one of these riving knives when you change in for thin kerf blade. And please don't forget to put the 0.101 back when you put the standard combination blade back in the machine. All right, item number 5 is avoiding warped or twisted wood. And every time, that's why you need a joiner and a planer to get your wood completely flat and parallel. But if you end up having a board that, if you lay it on the surface and you can feel it rock, that's a dangerous board. You need to take care of that on the joiner and make sure that you flatten that out. The other major problem that you have is if you have an edge that has a curve in it and it's not sitting flat against the fence. So any wood that you use must be flat to the table and flat against the fence. I may say this a couple more times through this video, but it's a very important item. So be sure that your wood is flat and it's straight so it lays flat against the fence. Okay, item number 6 is where to stand while you're operating the table saw. I'm sorry, for right-handers and left-handers, the recommended and preferred position is going to be the left side of the blade. Item number, you never want to be in line with that saw blade, and that refers back to what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about kickback. So if this board's climbing up and you push down and it kicks, if you're behind, it's going to come right at you. So your preferred position is off to the left side of the blade, and you're going to work everything this way. So if something does happen, it's going to go past you. And with that in mind, be aware that you want to make sure that no one is standing behind you when you're operating the saw. Don't allow people to stand there and watch you, or if they're walking back behind you, try to only do your work while no one's there. Item number 7, choose the correct push block to help you. Even though this is almost a full hand width, I never use my hand to push through. If this should ever, unfortunately, get a kickback in it, it's going to pull your hand along with it. And you're not going to know it until after it's well done. So the whole point is to make sure that you have, and everybody's got their favorites. This one happens to be my favorite. I know a couple guys that really like this one. So you're going to use this as the push stick to get this through to your final cut. With that, I have a preference, and it's kind of an industry preference. I see a lot of people doing monitoring, they've got their push stick and they're all the way off to one side. That's not optimal. I mean, if you're push here, this stock has a chance or a propensity to push away from the fence. All right, and the same thing out here. If you're doing that, the back end can kick. So recommended preference is either dead center or slightly to the left. You don't have to get right up on the blade, but you want to be center or just slightly to the left. That's going to put the best push on that stick for full control. The reason I like this stick, and even this one, will work just as well, and we've all been there. If you're cutting a piece, you know when you're cutting, this blade has a chance to, it wants to lift that piece up off the table. Your job is to keep it down. So this allows you to add a little bit of front push on it, and that'll help keep it down onto the table and avoid that tendency to want it to lift. This one pretty much does the same thing, maybe not just as far as a reach, but you can accomplish the same thing with this. The other push stick is, it's not a push, it's kind of a push stick. All right, this is called a gripper, and I love this tool. This comes in really handy if you are making thin cuts. You're going to have the blade, let's just say I'm going to come and I need to cut something like that. I can do a number of things. I can set this, there's 2 screws on either side here. I can loosen this and I can slide this either way, so when I pull through, I can go right over top of the blade. If I have my blade set correctly and I'm only at the bottom of the gullet, I have plenty of clearance in here. So you're not going to hit. So you just have to meet this divider. You can move this divider on either side. So if you prefer to use this and run it up against the fence, I have space in here that I can do that. And if I have it, just say I have it a little bit closer, I can move this fence here to the other side, tighten them up a little bit. You know, it doesn't take much. And now I almost have a thin cut where I can get that thin piece in there that may not even fit. Now this will fit, but I still like this, because now I'm pushing both sides of the blade all the way through. The other option this allows, which I like, is if you have a thinner piece, and now I'll just try this one I may be either a little bit off, but I can set this, and all this does is act kind of like outriggers, and it just gives me a little bit more balance and stability, so when I'm pushing this forward, and then I can go right through the push, and it just has a lot more control and balance. So these are just 3 of the recommendations. I think it's important for you to use, especially one of these, so you can find out which one you prefer to use most of the time. And this one certainly has its special uses, but those special uses, this comes in very handy. And the other thing I tend to do, if I'm making a cut, and I'm going to demonstrate this on one of the longer boards, I tend to keep my push sticks right here. I don't want them down here where I've got to stop and reach and the blades engage with the piece. I keep it right here, so as I'm pushing, I can grab that without taking my eyes off of what I'm doing and continue through. So make sure you pre-position your push sticks where you're going to need them. All right. Item number 8. All right, we're gonna, this is gonna be part of the control section of this. And the first item I'm gonna show you is how, and I see this day in and day out when I'm monitoring. I have a long board here that I wanna push through. Leveling is, I see a lot of people, when they're cutting, they're pushing down on the back and it's raising the board up while it's in the cut. That is dangerous because now my only option, if it's starting to ride up, is I have to try to push it back down. That's when you're going to cause kickback. It's got a high tendency to maybe grab it and push it back. So the way around that is going to be using a roller stand, and it's easy to set up. Right? There's a simple knob here that's going to raise and lower this. I'm going to take my stock, I'm just going to turn it up on end. I'm going to bring the roller underneath it. I'm going to loosen it up, and I'm just going to come up and touch it. All right, I'm not picking it up off the table. And I'm just going to take this thing, I'm going to move it back a little bit because this is my workspace. To the left of the blade up here. So now I have this board ready to go, and it's flat here and it's flat there. Now I don't have to worry so much about holding this back end up because it's too heavy. So now I can start running this into the blade and it'll continue to cut. So the biggest thing about this is when I'm doing this, I got two things. I'm watching that this is staying flat against the fence and this hand is in control. I see way too many people coming up and their hand is coming up along with the board and it's getting way too close to the blade. We all have our minds moving very quickly and we're not keenly aware of all our extremities are. So what I tend to do is I hook my thumb back here and I use my fingers here to use as control, and I'm holding this down and against the fence, all right? And I'm pushing with my right hand and moving it forward. And there's times I might have to shift a little bit, and I bring this all the way up and I do not go from my push stick until this board is almost all the way on the table. Too many times people have a tendency to start back here and you're just going to have a tendency to lift that board. So if you're up here, now I can grab this push stick and now I can just keep this hand over here and I can push that through the blade. All right, so that's just a little bit of leveling. Use the tools that we have. Use a roller stand if you need be. And then in the other case, you can either put a roller stand on the outside or you have a catcher. Somebody out there that's going to keep your stock from going off the extension table. Okay, one of my habits that I thankfully I've gotten into, because again, I often have my brain 2 steps ahead and I'm not present in what I'm doing. So what I do is I set up my cut. So I verify that my fence is in the right position. I verify that my blade, and there, it's a little bit low. So I verify that the blade is going to be at the right height. I lock that. And also I have my push stick ready and it's right where I want it. As an alternative, sometimes I will keep a pusher here just in case I want to get a little bit close. I need to get a little bit closer to the blade. I don't want my hand up there. I'll use this. So, but for right now, I look and I just take stock. And I just go through in my mind how that cut's going to go. So I'll turn the saw on and then start the blade. So I'm ready. Now I'm going to start my cut. I got my hand hooked back here. My fingers are pushing against the fence and I'm holding this down so it doesn't ride up as soon as it hits the blade. So I'm going to push with my right hand, and as I get here, I'm going to hook my thumb, keep moving it, and I'm going to put my stick here, my push stick, and I'm going to go through. The point of this exercise is I want to make sure that I am pushing all the way through the blade. I never want to have my piece of stock stay in contact with a spinning blade, couple of things. It's going to create heat, it's going to burn the end of your wood, and it has a chance of causing kickback. So I don't really care if this your fall off is over here. That's not going to matter because it's not going to kick back because it's all open. This is trapped. So this, I'm going to make sure I clear that spinning blade. It's a very important point. I see a lot of people that leave this engaged with the blade just because it finished the cut, but the blade's still turning in contact with a trapped piece of wood. I'm not so worried about the outside fall off. Item 10 is how to clear the stock. Do not lean over the blade. So if I'm cutting this piece, and as I mentioned, I'm going to send it all the way through. I'm going to have a piece of fall off. I'm going to push this through. And then I see too many people, they want to lean over and grab that fall off, the cut piece, and their arm or even their sleeve is so close to the turning blade, and I don't know that they're even aware of it. So, and I also have seen people take their thumb and push the fall off out of the way. Please don't do that. The easiest thing is step around the saw and clear the piece off from the side. Okay, item number 11 is not allowing the fence to come in contact with the blade. And if you think that's funny, you're going to see two of our fences already have blade marks in it. So this fence should be no closer than, I don't know, even a quarter to a half inch. It doesn't need to be that close. We have ways around that, all right? We have a series of backer boards. There's one right here on the bottom. So I'm just going to grab backer board. I'm going to grab one of these funky looking sticks. That goes on the back. All right, I'm going to place that there. All I need is two of these clamps. And it's easy to hook up. So now I've got this. I just pull it down and I clamp it on. All right, I'm going to put it up wherever I want it. But now I don't have to worry about cutting into the fence. All right, if you're using a dado set, you can see that we already have one cut out to accept the dado set. I'm actually surprised some of these aren't already pre-cut. We're going to address this one in a different video. But this is an easy setup. You can bring this up to the blade and not have to worry about damaging the fence. So again, anywhere from a quarter, a half inch, that should be absolute minimum. There's no reason to have that metal fence right up on the blade. All right, item number 12 is you want to make sure that your stock is always flat to the table and flat against the fence. So as you cut, I'm simulating a cut here, but as you send a cut through, your eyes do not need to be on the blade at all times. My eyes tend to be here, up against the fence. And I'm looking to make sure this thing's not going to start walking away. And if it does, the worst thing you can do is take the stock and push it and try to get it back on track. All you're going to do is force this into the blade and actually cause kickback. And that can be a bad situation. So if you can't complete the cut as it's walking away and just continue to push through and you're forced to stop the cut, you stop the machine. Stop that, wait till the blade is done spinning, and then you can back this piece out and readdress the cut again. You can certainly try it a second time. But again, my concentration almost is always back here against the fence. That's what that's going to give you the first hint of an issue if this starts to open up in here, whether it opens up here or it opens up back there. Both can be a bad situation. So I'm always concentrating to make sure this rides right up against the fence. The blade will do its job. All you gotta do is control your hand to make sure that while you're looking here, your hand isn't going someplace else. That's why the other good reason is I keep my hand back here, I'll push, and then I have this going through, and I'm standing off this side of the blade, and I push through, but I'm still keeping an eye up here. The next item is going to be avoiding cutting thin strips on the right side of the blade. I think that's why a lot of this happens. I think a lot of people come in here and they're trying to get this down to whether it's an eighth of an inch or whatever it may be, and they're having problems getting the stock through. And that's only one of the things, how you get your stock through there. The other is, this isn't a zero clearance throat plate, so a lot of these times the fall, it's gonna crash, go down inside that throat plate. So the best solution to that is, there's a couple of them, but I prefer this woodpeckers. This is a thin cut jig, and all it has is a couple facet nuts back here. I'm just gonna line them up, slide them into this groove. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where I want this cut. So I'm gonna look on this side. If I want it an eighth of an inch, I'll figure out how far off I need it. All right, and I'll lock this, and I'm gonna just taper these down a little bit, and I'm gonna move this gauge out till it just contacts. So now I can sit there and I can run this through. After I get that cut, it'll be thinner, so I have to put this on, and I just have to come up for the next cut, kiss it, lock it, cut. After that cut, you'll go through the same procedure. You're gonna come up, you're gonna bring it up, just kiss the roller, lock, and cut it. So this does a really nice job, and you can get these strips very thin without having to damage the fence or have to worry about trying to get this push stick in way too close of a tolerance. So these do work really well. So give it a try. Again, if you're not real sure, contact someone. They will certainly help you go through this process. Okay, item 14 is the use of a feather board. You don't always need these, and you don't necessarily always have the opportunity to use them because of the shape of the board. But if you have an equal width board and you need to rip it, it comes in very handy. So especially if we're going to make repeated cuts. But there are rules to using this. All right, the first one is you don't want the feather coming back at you. That's counterintuitive. So I want to make sure that I'm going with the wood. So I want it pointing in the direction that I want to push my stock. So I'm going to bring this up to where I want it. I'm going to lock my table. I'm going to bring this up, and I usually come up. I won't get too much closer to the blade than this. I'll leave a couple inches of space. And it doesn't help if you're going to have it right up to the edge of the blade. It doesn't do anymore. So, and what I'll do is I'll put my board there, and I'm lightly applying pressure, not too much, because it'll make it hard to push the wood through. So I just have light pressure. I give the knobs a half a turn, and it locks itself to the table magnetically. So now I can take this out. You can see I can push it through, and now I can make repeated cuts. But this only works if your board is equal width, all right? It can't be 3 inches here and 4 inches down there. Even a half-inch variation is going to be a problem. So it works for even with boards, and especially if you have a lot of them. And all you're going to do is go through here, same procedure. I'm going to cut through, and then I got my push stick, and I'm going to push through. What you cannot do with this, and I see it, but people still do it, is you never want this up here, even with the blade or even behind it. The closest you ever want to get to that blade is an inch or two back here. So never use this on the blade or behind it. And you certainly don't want to use two of them. If I have one here, you don't want another one back here. All you're going to do is force that cut closed, and it's going to cause our favorite word today, kickback. So try it. They work great. They're a very nice addition. These used to be the screw downs. These are now magnetic. You can put them almost anywhere. So give it a try. They work great. Okay, item 15. We never use a miter gauge and a fence on a cross cut together. Whether it is on the left side of the blade or it's on the right side of the blade, we just never do that. All right, so this setup right now, if I push this through, is a dangerous cut. This is something you never want to do. What you're doing is you're putting a piece that's trapped in between the blade and the fence. And this just can cause a very serious situation. All right, let's imagine that I just cut this piece in here. It's got no place to go. Even if you can't push it through, it's going to get trapped in there. And once it gets to the back of the teeth are going to throw it up, and it's going to jump up on that tooth, and God knows where it's going to go. So this is always a dangerous situation, and this should be table saw 101. You just never do this situation. The other situation that you just never want, there's two others. One is on this side of the blade. And again, I have seen this happen, I can't tell you how many times. I will see people try this, where they're holding it down, but they're cutting through. It's still a cross cut. It's trapped inside the blade and the fence, and you're trying to jam it through a confined space. And with a cross cut, you are cutting against the grain, which is tough wood, and it's going to want to force this board to do things necessarily it doesn't want to do. Now, as ridiculous as that may sound, I was working one day and I had somebody trying this with their bare hands, pushing a piece through, cross cut, in between the blade and the fence, pushing it through. And they argued with me that they do this all the time. Well, it's against the rules. You can't do this. It's a dangerous cross cut in a trapped area. All right, so be aware of what you do. My next is going to be showing you the resolution, how to avoid this situation by using a standoff block. Okay, item number 7 is how to do a cross cut safely using the fence as a marking gauge, but we're going to use this, it's called a standoff. That's going to give you the clearance in here to do this cross cut safely. All right, and we accomplish that by using a standoff block, and that's these here. Where I'm going to get the backer and the block, and I'm going to use a clamp. So this block just goes behind the fence. This is going to come down here, and I'm just going to clamp it in place. Oops, sorry, backwards. All right, now these blocks are 1 inch. So if I am really steadfast, what I typically do, if I need a particular cross cut, I will take this, I will move it up here behind the blade, and I will set this at the dimension that I want. And let's just say I need 4 inches. So I'm going to come up, it's 4 inches here, all right, but it's going to be 5 inches to here. So now that I got that space, I'm just going to loosen this and I'm going to slide this back to a safe position. And by that, I mean now I can place this here. I'm going to hold this down and against the miter gauge, and now I can safely cut this off. What that's going to do, it's going to drop this piece safely inside here where there's a relief. And I can then stop the blade or safely clear that piece out. All right. The one thing you do not want to do is you never want to have this engaged. And I'm going to move this up a little bit. I don't want to have this engaged with the blade and the standoff at the same time. All right. That can add to a dangerous situation. So this standoff has to be back here where it is, once I get in contact with the blade with my stock, I'm clear to standoff. So all I need to do is come back here, set it up. I can even set this up if I want to do a stop. All right. and then I can now cut it. And when this stock falls off, it's got an inch of free space where it will not bind up with the blade. All right. That as a point, I want to make sure that you understand that even though I've got an inch space in here, you've got to be careful how you clear this piece. If you just push it, there is a chance, depending on the length of this part, that it could bind up inside here. If it kicks the wrong way, it could bind in here when it gets to a tooth, and it's going to inject this right in. So be careful how you clear any fall off on the right side of the blade. Be careful as you push it through that you're not going to come in contact with the moving blade once you clear that piece. All right, so it's easy to set up. It's really easy to use, and I see a lot of people using it. And again, it's just a matter of setting that up. I hold down and I pull back onto here, so I'm just keeping my fingers, and I make sure my fingers are inside that blade. I'm standing to the left of the blade, and now I can just push that right through. One thing I do want to caution you on is if you have a small piece, all right, and I am just going to pretend that this went through the cut, all right, and I cut this, all right, now I cut this and I go through, I've got a trap situation here. So I want to make sure when I cut that, my fall off is over here. I want to go through that piece and do not bring it back. You do not want to have a cross-cut situation where you've got the end grain coming back onto those teeth. I'm going to leave it up there. I am going to lift this stop, move back, and then I can slide it out. So be careful sliding back through the blade when you're especially using a stop and you're in a pinch situation. All right, item 17 should be a no-brainer. No freehand cuts. All right, never, no, don't do it. It's not allowed. So I don't want to hear that you've got 30 years of experience and you think you can do this. All right, never freehand cut anything. I can't even think of a situation where that would be okay. So let's just avoid it, all right? Okay, item 18, I think I just covered this in a previous item just a couple ago, but I think it's worth. Do not ever cross-cut using the fence only and cutting through. Again, I can't explain to you how dangerous this situation is, a cross-cut and the chance of binding in here and this piece coming at you. So please just avoid this one. No cross-cuts using the fence. Okay, item 19 is do never push stock through on the left side of the blade. Always on the inside of the blade when you're doing a rip cut between the blade and the fence. I explained a little while ago about positioning your push stick in the middle or just slightly to the left, but not too far close to the blade or the fence. You never push out on the outside. So if I do have this situation, I will often use a block and I'll run this through, and if I have to, I can clear that with a quick little flick on the left side. But there's almost no reason I can think of why you would need to push on the left side. And while we're talking about that, I did want to address one other thing, and I want to apologize to my left-handed friends. I know that you would love to work on this side of the blade, on the right side of the blade, using your left hand. The problem that this causes is you do not have a clear view of what you're doing. You cannot see the fence, the stock against the fence. All right, being on the right side, on the left side, I can see all of that. The only way around that is you have to lower the blade, you got to move this fence to the other side, you got to reconfigure the whole fence. It's probably just as easy to learn how to cut and try to be a little bit ambidextrous. I know it's a right-handed world, unfortunately, but it just is not going to work if you stand on the right side of the blade. You just don't have a clear cut. Your face is hanging right over top of the blade where you do not want it, and too many things can happen. So always on the left side of the blade. Okay, item 20. It's our last item. This is going to be, I think we mentioned a lot of this in some of the previous items, but it's worth bearing again. And that is, you're making your cut and leaving it engaged with the blade. Just recently, and I'm talking probably only a couple weeks ago, I'm watching somebody cut. They got up to here and their push stick was down there. They actually left the blade running. It was left there. They walked over, they bent down, picked up the push stick, and then came over and continued the cut. So that's a no. That's why I always make sure I have all the tools I need positioned and ready to go. The best way to do this is, again, I'm cutting, I'm trying to keep constant motion, all right, constant speed. I'm ready to get here and I'm going through and I'm going to try to complete my cut and I'm going to pass it all the way through. Constant control, constant speed. Now, if you are forced, right, and sometimes this happens, you're forced to stop a cut. Something's going awry, the motor's bogging down. If you're partway through, your best situation is to stop the machine. Stop the machine, let the blade stop, and then work your piece out and figure out what went wrong. Was it pinching somewhere? Was the stock pinching the blade? Is it too hard? Did you hit something? I don't know. But analyze it once you get the machine stopped and you got your piece out from becoming a danger. Okay, final comments. I just have 3 quick comments. I ended up with I have a cheat sheet. I just wanted to read some of these off to you. All right, this video does not cover all situations, right? But it covers some of the main topics, some of the things that we see day to day. And our main goal is to try to keep you safe so you're working in the best and safest possible way. All right, always use caution when using a table saw. If you're not sure what you're doing, please ask for help. I have never been in this shop when I have asked somebody some advice and they said, I'm busy or I can't. If you're just not sure, just ask for help, all right? If you have a setup, if you have something all put together and you're making, I don't know, maybe a little wonky cut, if it doesn't feel right, don't make the cut, all right? If it doesn't feel right, just walk away. Get some advice, ask people to evaluate your setup if you think it's going to do what you expect. And again, the most egregious mistake on a table saw is complacency. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, I've been doing this for 20 years, 15, 30 years. They sometimes are the most reckless, or they just go through the motions. They're not respectful of the power of the machine. So complacency can really cause you damage. All right. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.